Okay, I'm going to do a quick review or overview of genetics and specifically Punnett squares. And it's for kind of a rainy day today, so it's a day for inside. And this has to do with your square pants worksheet here. But just so you know how to fill it out. So there's some definitions here, some words that you should know what they mean. And some of these words are HE, or which stands for heterozygous. And then there's also homozygous. Okay? So when it comes to DNA codes for all of our different looks or traits in life. So if you have brown hair or blonde hair or blue eyes or brown eyes, those are different traits. And traits can either be dominant or recessive. Okay, so a dominant trait is something that overpowers, and a recessive trait is something that is underpowered. Okay, and an example would be eye color. Okay, blue eye color is said to be a recessive trait because it is dominated by brown eye color. Okay, and so maybe you've often wondered why two parents that have brown eyes all of a sudden have a blue-eyed kid. Does that mean the kid's not theirs? No, it has to do with this dominant and recessive, this heterozygous, this homozygous traits. Okay, so when it comes to a gene has two pieces of DNA on it that it's basically got a primary and a backup copy of its DNA, of its gene. And so what we do is when we write down letters to represent DNA or represent traits, we often ask about the trait color, and then we put that in terms of letters. And a dominant gene, okay, and they're called alleles because a gene is two alleles. Okay, so there's two letters here with every trait. So for eye color, I might use the letter, and it doesn't really matter what letter it is, I might use the letter B. And so the letter B for eye color would be chosen because B is blue for blue eye colors. So let's pretend that we're gonna cross or see what possibilities that a brown-eyed girl, okay, just like the song, and a blue-eyed boy, if they were to have kids, what type of offspring, what type of kids could they possibly have? Well, we know from past experiences and from taking a look at pedigrees and stuff that brown eyes is a dominant trait. So we use a capital B for dominant traits. Okay? Now, we also know that blue eyes is recessive. So that means if you have a choice between a capital B and a small b, the capital B will win. Okay? And they will be brown. Brown is dominant to blue. So the girl, if she's a brown-eyed girl, she is either capital B, small b, because everybody's got two genes, which would be brown because of the capital B, or small b, capital B, brown because of the capital B, or capital B, brown. Okay, there's three possibilities for her brown eyes. She needs a capital B there because brown eyes are dominant and she's got brown eyes, so she definitely has a capital B allele. So the DNA is split up into two different parts. Okay? Now, for the blue-eyed boy, blue-eyed is recessive, so if he had a capital B anywhere, he would be brown. But he's not, so his DNA, there's only one possibility. It's little b, or little b. Okay? It has to be little b because if there's any capital there at all, this boy would be brown. Okay, so he's blue. Okay, matter of fact, this applies to me because I've got blue eyes, and the question is, what colors my daughter have? Because her mother is brown eyes. So then the kids, what color of eyes does she have? Okay, same thing for red hair. She's got red hair. Red hair is recessive. And so what happened there? Okay. Moving on, okay? When we do the Punnett square, we make a square of four things. And we'll say mom goes on the top, dad goes on the side, okay? Well, since dad is blue, we put a BB. It's like a multiplication table here. And since mom is brown, now we don't know which brown she is. So in the question, I have to tell you what type of brown she is. These two things are the same thing. They're just rewritten. So if you ever see a little b and then a capital B, that's actually written wrong. It should be just reversed. It should be written like this. Okay? So capital B just kind of rearranges up front. But this is said to be one big, one little, or one little, one big. And this is big and big. Okay? When they're the same letter, they're said to be homozygous. Okay? Now, you may recognize the homo and the hetero from sexual. Okay? Homosexual, same sex. Okay? Heterosexual, opposite sexes. Okay? So we're talking about zygotes, though, okay, which means tiny babies. And so when we're talking about sperm and egg, what happens is sperm from dad and egg from mom form a zygote here. And so that's why the zygote comes from. And so if the zygote, let's take a look at mom. We're going to call her heterozygous. One of each. It's a little bit more interesting. Okay? So heterozygous, one large, one small. Okay? And that's all that means. Capital B, small b. So capital B, small b. This child, potential child. Okay? So these are just potential. We don't know how they're going to mix until they come out, right? It's random. But this child here would be brown eyes. How do we know? Well, the brown eyes came from the mom. Okay? This child here, multiplying across, would be blue. Okay? This child down here would be blue. And this child up here, now I could write it like this as well. Okay? But again, we put the capital letter first. This child here would also be brown. So basically, there's a 50% chance of getting brown-eyed kids and a 50% chance of getting blue-eyed kids. Okay? So these two are said to be heterozygous. These two are said to be homozygous. It doesn't matter whether they're dominant or recessive, so sometimes we use them both. So these would be said to be homozygous recessive because they're both the same, small. And this one over here would be said to be homozygous because they're the same, dominant because they're both capital letter. So in questions, they often say that. Okay, so let's take a look. That's a little bit of background here. Here, it's the same type of thing. In rabbits, black fur is dominant to white fur. If you cross a BB, so that'd be a homozygous dominant male with a heterozygous female. Okay, what are the possible genotypes? Genotypes are the actual letters. Phenotypes is what they look like. So capital letter are the genotypes. Okay, capital letter. But what do they look like? Well, those are black furs. Matter of fact, they're all black furs. Because even that, black fur is dominant, so they all have a capital letter, so they're all black fur. Okay? Moving on here. Okay, so pea plants, same type of thing. Okay, so in this case, genotypes refers to the letters. And in this case, we've got a homozygous tall because pea plants is tall. Tall height is dominant to short height. They have to tell you that in the question. So capital letter T represents tall. Small letter t represents short. So this person is tall, but they could have a short kid depending on who else is they're married to. Now, when you, and we kind of know this, when you get a, we call this in human genetics, well, not human genetics, animal genetics, purebreds, okay? So this person here is, or this pea plant is a purebred, okay? Now, we don't say that for humans because it's not nice to call people purebred, or the other version here, this is not purebred, so it's called a hybrid, okay? And again, we don't call people hybrids, right? But there are certain names of people that you might say, like if you have a white person marry a black person, and the kids, they are often the tanned color in between, mulatto. Okay, so there are certain things. That's not racist or anything else. That's just the way that well, in that case, the skin colors kind of mix, and that's where you get some of these really nice exotic types of mixtures. But it also happens for animals, and for purebreds, the problem with purebreds in animals, if you think of dogs, for example, is that when you get purebreds, there's sometimes genetic problems with the purebreds. But if you have a hybrid, the extra DNA from someplace else often cures the problem with the hybrid. So, for instance, being tall, being tall is a problem because for whatever reason, it causes weak bones. Well, if you're a purebred tall and a purebred tall, you're going to have weak bones. But if you're purebred tall and a heterozygote, if you got a little t in there, the weak bones could be cured by the little t's smaller, the other part of the DNA that codes for something different. So we always want to have a mixture of that, and that's actually why we have laws and things against incest. Is to prevent us from having purebreds in humans because there's genetic deficiencies in that. And you just think of a golden retriever, purebred golden retriever. They're more expensive, but when they hit 11 or 12, they've got, I think, golden retrievers, they have hip problems, big time. And so everybody knows that has a purebred golden retriever that when they're 11 or 12, boom, they're going to need hip surgery, or you're going to have to put them down, or something like that, because of that problem. Okay, so I'm going to skip right here to the bikini bottom genetics now. I've got people coming in here, and I don't want to interrupt my recording. So for each genotype below, so the genotype is the letters, indicate whether it's heterozygous or homozygous. That's simple. All you're looking for is homo meaning the same, hetero meaning different. Are these two letters the same or different? They're the same. So capital. So that would be said to be homozygous. Capital small, that is heterozygous. Capital. Okay? So if they're both capital or both small, they're homos. Okay? And so I'm just going to label all the homozygous. Homozygous. This would be homozygous recessive because they're both small. Homozygous. Everything else is heterozygous. Hetero. We're not talking about sexual here. We're talking about zygous because the zygous refers to the DNA. So these things both code. These are said to be allele number 1, allele number 2, and 2 alleles makes a gene, and a gene is expressed as a trait, what it looks like. Sometimes we don't know. We've got millions of genes in our body, but sometimes we don't really realize what they look like. They could be just as subtle as the color of our eyelashes, or it could be something as subtle as a different type of protein that's in our blood. We wouldn't be able to tell that or to know that what that gene codes for. Purebreds are homozygous, which is the hybrids heterozygous. So anything up here labeled HE are referred to as hybrids. Okay, so now if yellow body is dominant to blue, okay, we're going to, when we have a capital Y, what color is this body? Is that going to be a yellow body or a blue body? Okay, well, whenever you have a dominant trait, that's going to be the dominant color. So capital Y, yellow. Anytime there's a capital Y, it's yellow. And a yellow will overpower a blue. So capital Y, yellow, blue. Yellow is the answer. So this is yellow. Capital, small y, so that's blue and that's blue. So this is blue. There's no overpowering thing. The only blue will be this case. Square shape is dominant to round. So in other words, capital S is what we usually use the dominant trait for the letter. You don't have to. So they use the Y here for yellow because yellow is dominant, and they use capital S here for square because square is dominant. You don't have to, but that's usually a common thing. Square shape is dominant to round, so capital S, that's square. Square, capital S, that's square. Okay, as long as you have a capital as dominant, is definitely, small s, that's the only one, that's the round. There's your round pants. So, what it looks like, so this is what it looks like. The square, the round, the blue, the yellow. That's what it looks like. That's referred to as the phenotype. The genotype are the actual letters. So if I've got something that's tall, what are the letters for that? Now there's two possibilities for tall. There's capital T, there's three actually, but capital T, small t, capital T, which we don't normally write. We just rearrange that and write it like that. Or capital T, capital T. Okay, so there's 3 possible answers there. But there's only one possible short answer, and that's little t, little t. Okay, same thing for yellow body. Okay, now they're saying pink is dominant to yellow, so the only yellow body would be homozygous recessive, little b, little p. Everything else is a capital P and then a little p, or little p, capital P, or capital P, capital P. That make sense? All right. Let's do now. By the way, the bikini bottom genetics here, the answers are all on page 3. So if you take a look here, number 1, homozygous, heterozygous, they're all right there. So I gave you the answer key for this thing, but I still wanted to go over this really quickly. So I'm going to go do one of these things. SpongeBob SquarePants recently met SpongeBob Susie, round pants at a dance. SpongeBob is heterozygous. Okay, so he's one of each for his square shape. So, in other words, if you were to write the genotype for that, since square is dominant, we already said square is dominant to round, so SpongeBob's is capital S, small s. He's heterozygous. He's one of each. But Sponge Susie is round, so round is dominant and recessive, and so she has to be little. Okay? Now, create a Punnett square over here. So, in other words, we'll have Bob up top here and Susie over here. Okay, and so Bob is capital S, small s, and Susie is small s, small s. What kind of kids will they have? Well, let's do the multiplication table, the Punnett square. Capital S, small s, small s, small s, capital S, small s, and small s, small s. All I'm doing is I'm multiplying. Now, what do they look like? The genotypes are here, so let's take a look at it. What list the possible genotypes? So it's capital S, small s, capital S, small s, small s, small s, and small s, small s. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those and phenotypes. Okay? So I'm going to say 2 of them are, what is a capital small? Well, square. 2 are square, and 2 are round. That's what they look like. So just the descriptions. The phenotype is the description of what they look like. What are the chances of a child with a round shape? Well, there's 4 child's possibilities, right, in the DNA. And what's the chance of the round? A round or 2 out of 4. So 2 out of 4 or 50%. What about the square shape? 2 out of 4 or 50% in this case. And that's typical of dominant recessive versus heterozygous. Okay? In this case, both are heterozygous for pink body. Okay? So capital P, capital P, capital P, capital P. I'm doing this quick. Normally I'd have to look it up, but I just finished doing this one. So when you have a heterozygous versus a heterozygous, you get a capital, 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 small, capital, small, small, small. Okay, now, those are the genotypes, okay, and I can list them. What do they look like? 1, 2, 3, all have a capital P. So 3 are pink, and 1 is, what's the other one? Yellow. That's the phenotype. Okay, the genotype would be 1, this, so 1 PP, 2 PP, and 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. Okay, and again, this is typical. Geneticists know, as soon as you say 1, 2 to 1, oh yeah, it's a heterozygous cross. Geneticists are really good at this. What are the chances of a child with a pink body? Well, pink bodies are 1, 2, 3, 3 out of 4, or 75%. What are the chances of a yellow body? 1 out of 4, or 25%. Okay. Now, there's 2 more there. I'm not going to go through those because I want to fire this thing off. But you can go through those things and see if you the answers again are here. Okay. We just finished 3 out of 4, 75, and 1 out of 4, 25. You can try here Squidward, okay, and his family. Again, do the Punnett square. And to see if you can't get it here from a purebred. You know, we don't know if he's purebred or not, and that's what we're trying to figure out. Okay, this could be big bucks in terms of if you're talking about animals. The difference between a purebred dog and a non-purebred dog, or horses. Horses are really right. A purebred horse stud versus a non-purebred could mean a lot of money for somebody. There's lawsuits and everything is involved, especially with race horses and stuff. Lots of money there. And even in cattle, for milking cows and stuff, you want a stud that is a good milk producer and produces good calves. Farmers know all about this, and so when they do AI, artificial insemination, they pay thousands of dollars for a chance to get a good calf. Each shot there with the bull. So they have a guy come in and open up a book, and they pick your stud, and they'll do some AI there, but you pay a lot of money for each chance at conceiving a good bloodline for your cattle, for your stock. And so again, we're not dealing with the practical genetics of that, but it is kind of an interesting field. If you're in the farming and everything else, you would know about that. So hopefully that'll help there with this sheet. And then again, the sheet is going to be also on your final assessment, which is there. You can go ahead and do that now. All right, good luck.